Being avoidant in relationships isn't just the obvious stuff. They won't commit, they blow hot and cold, they ghost you when you try to talk about commitment. You might not realize this, but if you have a pattern of falling for people like this, you are avoiding intimacy just as much, but in your own way. So what happens when two people who can't deal with getting close fall madly in love? My letter today is from a woman I'll call Nelly, and she writes, "Dear Anna, I found myself in a very confusing situation involving a former friend from my past. We met 15 years ago when we were both freshmen in college." All right, I've got the fairy pencil, and I'm going to go through and circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's going on in Nelly's life here. At the time, she says, because of CPTSD, I was uncomfortable in any situation where someone showed interest in me. I'd often rush into sexual relationships without thinking. I'd shut down when there was any hint of emotional connection and chase the other person the moment they would reject me. But with him, it was different. We were just friends, at least that's how I understood it. He liked me, but he kept it a secret, and I felt comfortable around him because I didn't sense that. After our semester ended, he went back to his home country. We stayed in touch sporadically over the next year and a half, mostly through occasional video calls, one of which included meeting his family. And I still thought we were just friends, even though he'd occasionally tell me that he missed me and he called me beautiful. And for some reason, it never registered with me. 2 years later, after a period of no contact, I got an unexpected message from him saying he was coming to my country for the holidays, and I'd been caught up in my own life and missed his message until it was too late to meet up. Fast forward another 10 years. I'm married to a good man, someone I care for, but someone with whom I'd never felt a deep connection. I think in part I chose him because I was afraid that a deeper connection would trigger me, and I thought I could have a more normal relationship with him without those triggering feelings. My husband and I were in counseling about our incompatibility issues and lack of intimacy, and we were discussing separation when the former friend and I communicated once again. I contacted him to apologize for not being a better friend all those years ago, and that's when he told me he had always liked me and still thought about me after all this time. He said his original intention when he came was to bring me back to his country, which I assumed meant proposing. My heart lit up at the thought that this could be true love. He mentioned he had a girlfriend, but they were having problems. And a future together wasn't on the table. I tried to set some boundaries, but he began to compliment and flirt with me, and I was too weak to resist. I eventually reciprocated, and things went too far, resulting in a sexual encounter over video chat. Afterward, recalling he still had a girlfriend, I suggested we stop the sexual part of our interactions, at least for now, and just be friends. He agreed with a 1 or 2 word reply. I later mentioned I would be visiting his country in a few months, and if he was available, I would love to meet up. He seemed interested, and I then told him about my traumatic upbringing and why I hadn't recognized his intentions earlier, even though he never told me directly. I also told him I had shared what happened with my husband, and we were finalizing our separation, so I would be free to meet him at that time. Oof. At this point, he completely disappeared, no longer responding to my messages. I begged him with multiple messages to share what was going on and what he was thinking, but I heard nothing, and this silence devastated me. After several months, I saw online that he had moved to the same city as his girlfriend, so I reached out one last time. I told him I respected his decision, but just wanted to understand what had happened. He replied briefly, confirming that he had moved and was now engaged to her. I told him if he was happy, then I was happy for him. He explained that he had disappeared because he still liked me, and he thought about me, but had felt our video call dangerous and wanted to do that again. I was confused. On one hand, I still had feelings for him, but I knew this could be a complicated and messy situation. I asked him if he thought his fiancée was the one, and he said, I think so, but implied problems and then suggested we meet up. The flirting started again, and I got caught up in it. But the next day, he pulled back, becoming distant and short with me. I never got the chance to tell him I didn't want to build something with him if it was secretive or hurtful to somebody else. He just cut me off again. I decided to reach out to his fiancée. You did. And tell her the truth. It felt like a gamble, but she responded graciously and thanked me. She told me he had betrayed her in the past. He tried to defend himself by accusing me of lying. He had created a fake social media profile of me and messaged himself as me saying that this was fate now that she was out of the picture. His fiancée saw through the fake message and broke up with him. One of his other defenses for his betrayal that he told her and me is that his speaking to me this year was all just to trick me and gave me payback for not paying attention to him in the past, especially when he visited my country. I was both hurt and confused. I felt like I was being punished. Here's the part that I'm struggling with. Despite everything he has done, lying, betraying, and treating me horribly, I can't seem to let go of him. A part of me still wants to believe he was the love I missed out on, even though I logically know that's problematic. I'm second-guessing my decisions and my judgment. I'm hoping you can offer some clarity, wisdom, or guidance, Anna. I'd really appreciate your perspective. Thank you, Nelly. All right, Nelly, sure thing. So I'm going to go through and go back to what you told me here for some perspective. All right. So you had a past where you have always been turned off by people who were into you. You would rush into sexual relationships without thinking. And then if there was any emotional connection, you'd pull away. So you're a strong avoidant. And then you'd chase the other person once they rejected you. This is a anxious avoidant. So this is somebody who's both like holds on to relationships and then pulls away from them, exactly as you describe. And it's one of the hardest attachment styles to have. In attachment theory, there's like secure attachment, and then there's all the categories of insecure attachment, which would be like avoidant, anxious, and then a mix, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here. What's interesting is that this guy you like has the same thing. Rushes in, gets all romantic and love bombs, and then pulls out. So it's like that terrible mix of rush in, rush out, rush in, rush out. As long as one of you was into the other one, the whole thing couldn't fly, and therefore it never flew for more than like a second. You were really good friends with him, and he liked you but kept it a secret. Yeah, but it worked for him to pine away for you because you weren't into him. And then he went back and he stayed in touch, and you were so not thinking about him that when he said he was coming to your country, you never even noticed the message, and it was too late. Like, that's a long time not looking at messages. You were not sitting around waiting to hear from him. So that would have worked for him real good, right? As an anxious avoidant. Then 10 years more, and you're married to a good guy, someone you care for, but someone with whom you've never felt a deep connection, which sadly is the default state of somebody who has this, kind of anxious avoidant attachment. If he's good to you, you're not into it. Now, I just want to say right now, you can heal this. You can heal this, and you can also find a middle ground with people who are with you when you have this terrible trauma injury. It almost always comes from trauma. And you said you chose him because you were afraid a deeper connection would trigger me, and I thought I could have a more normal relationship with him without those triggering feelings. And you know what? To some degree, you're right. And what you're saying is kind of one of those classic things that avoidants say. And then you and your husband were in counseling about our incompatibility issues and lack of intimacy. It's like, whoa, incompatibility issues and lack of intimacy is basically, I don't know, you're just telling me, you're not into this guy. And we were discussing separation when the former friend and I communicated once again, and you contacted him to apologize for not being a better friend all those years ago. So, oops, how you slipped right over, like it just occurred. It was me who did it. So you reached out to an ex right when you were in the middle of counseling to see if you could work out something with your husband. So I would just say that was a sabotaging move. It may have been like a cry for help that you just wanted to ruin your marriage so that you could pursue something more exciting. But that's it. That's what you did. Contacting exes is I mean, I realize he's not really an ex here. He's not really an ex, but I think you had some kind of a vibe, right? So that's when he told you he had always liked you and still thought about you after all this time. Okay, I see. He wasn't really an ex at that point, but still, I don't know. I just think the heart knows, right? He was an option. He was there for you. He was a way out. When you're really thinking of leaving a marriage and you have that anxious side of things, you don't want to be alone. Like, wouldn't it be nice if you could just line up somebody else and just go hop right out of the marriage into the next thing? It's like a nice thing. And we all wish it could be that way. But of course, doing it that way, as you correctly said later, is totally messy. He said his original intention when he came was to bring you back to his country, which I assumed meant proposing. So hold on there. A lot of times when I get letters from people who had trauma, who have attachment wounds, they make a lot of assumptions. He wanted to bring you back to his country. You assumed he meant proposing, and he did not propose. So, he did, though what means proposing is actually proposing. And so that's, I just want to tell you that. For future reference, never assume something like that. If they're proposing, they will propose. So then your heart lit up at the thought that this could be true love. So that's kind of what your heart was longing for, true love, anywhere you could find it. And you didn't really know him anymore. So he mentioned he had a girlfriend. Oh, he had a girlfriend, like talk about all the brakes just screeching on there. But you say that you just lied right over it. But they were having problems. And a future together wasn't on the table. I tried to set some boundaries. I don't know what you mean, really, but he began to compliment and flirt with me, and I was too weak to resist. I eventually reciprocated, and things went too far, resulting in a sexual encounter over video chat. Afterward, recalling he still had a girlfriend, I suggested we stop the sexual part of our interactions, at least for now, and just be friends. So I would like to say, if you haven't heard me say this, which I will say very strongly, it's not possible to just be friends. And it's actually very harmful to traumatized parties to try to be friends after a whole sexual thing has happened and he cheated on his girlfriend, his fiance, right? This girlfriend who was the one who he was going to marry. I guess she wasn't yet his fiance. But this whole thing, it's like, I'm with somebody, but we have problems. That's almost always how these affair stories start up. And it's when there's no boundary on, if they're with somebody, it's just a huge red line. It's like, no, if the day comes that they're not with somebody and they're still interested in you, they will let you know. But everyone, can I just tell you right now, you don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who is lying and hurting somebody to be with you, because you know what? You just became complicit in that harm to another person, and it's wrong. And it will get you. It will get you. And if you want to have a healthy relationship, you mustn't ever do dishonest things like that. So I'm not trying to be hard on you, Nelly. I just want to be very clear, because a lot of us were sort of raised in a culture where it's like, oh, but we're just friends. It's like, no, you're not. You can never just be friends again. Maybe if you had a really, truly common purpose, like a kid together, right? And over time, enough could change that you could have a reason to get together. But when there's been all this kind of madness, it's not a good friendship, and it's not fair to the girlfriend. Imagine that you really love somebody and you thought that it was leading to marriage, and you found out that your guy was having phone sex with somebody and who's still his friend. It would just totally be devastating. It would ruin all trust. And it's not for you to manage that for him. It's for you to stay out of it, to never be complicit in somebody else's terribly harmful behavior towards people who trust and love them. Just don't be part of it. You don't have to manage it for them. But anyway, this guy just told you who he is by doing that. He told you who he is. So he agreed with a 1 or 2 word reply. Okay. I later mentioned I'd be visiting his country in a few months. Okay, so they're right there, eliding, just like, oh, and I just happened to be visiting his country in a few months. Why do I think that you planned a trip to try to snag him? I just think that, and it's okay if that's how you felt, but don't pretend. Don't slip into faking who you are and what your motive is. I just happen to be in your country in a few months, and if he's available, you'd love to meet up as just friends. Okay, I'm not buying it, Nelly. I'm not buying it. I just want you to be honest with yourself. Nobody's trying to shame you here, but just be honest with yourself. Then I tried to pretend to be just a friend and see if I could get his love anyway. So he seemed interested, and I then told him about my traumatic upbringing and why I hadn't recognized his intentions earlier, even though he never told me directly. And I also told him I had shared what happened with my husband, and we were finalizing our separation, so I would be free to meet him at that time. Oh dear. So at that point, he completely disappeared. So in your mind, you guys were like super close and forming a relationship so big, it justified going to his country and wrenching him out of that relationship and leaving your marriage. And you told your husband what had happened, so you implicated him. You hurt somebody else. You know, he was part of hurting somebody else. You were married this whole time. My goodness. It doesn't matter if people are having problems. In fact, if people are having problems, like extra stay away from them so that they have a chance to honestly find their solution to their relationship. It might be a very vulnerable time in a relationship that's actually important and meant to be together. So that's the worst time to go get in there and, you know, start tempting somebody with your own fantasy and promises that you guys simply don't have the history to offer each other, that it could be so great. When you were friends was a long time ago. It was a different circumstance. So I'm kind of giving you a lesson about like the boundaries and the moral lines here. In addition to just, you know, what I just think, Nelly, is that if he had turned around and said, okay, great, I want to be with you, it would have been you who pulled away. I think there's an element here that only impossible love is like erotic for you guys. It has to be impossible or it's no good. And I know that's really, really common for people who are neglected as kids. You didn't even tell me your childhood, but I can guess. So then he disappeared. He didn't respond to messages. You begged him with multiple messages to share what was going on and what he was thinking, but I heard nothing. Yeah, that's a jerk, but it's actually the right thing. The right thing is to cut it off because he was serious about somebody else and he made a terrible mistake. And further communication with you was all emotional and about your feelings. And it's actually not right for a guy who's serious in a relationship to have that conversation. So, you know, this is tough love, but that's unfortunately the price we pay for getting involved with somebody who's already in a relationship, is sometimes to correct the situation, they got to ghost you. And it'd be nice if they said something, but it seriously is a slippery slope to have that communication. And so I just want you to let that into your heart, that if you're sort of like shoplifting, romantically shoplifting from somebody else, you might get nabbed, you know, you might end up with nothing. And that's what happened here. He couldn't talk to you anymore because what you guys were doing was wrong. And he was the first one to either realize it or try to save the day with the girlfriend, who knows. So you were devastated. And after several months, I saw online he had moved to the same city as his girlfriend. So I reached out one last time. And I told him I respected his decision, but just wanted to understand what had happened. And he replied briefly, confirming that he had moved and was now engaged to her. And I told him if he was happy, then I was happy for him. And he explained that he had disappeared. Oh, he just almost made the clean getaway, right? Because he still liked me and thought about me, but had felt our video call was dangerous. And he wanted to do it again. Talk about an ambivalent message. This guy. So he put out his hooks. He's like, oh, wait, are you letting go of me? Put his hook in you by saying, I'm so heartbroken because I want you, you know, which works. It works on somebody who's a anxious avoidant. So you say, I was confused. And you know, I was confused ought to be like a t-shirt here. It always means there's a deception going on and we can't face it. We're having cognitive dissonance because we can see the whole thing's no good, but it seems like maybe it is good. And then we go, I'm confused. You hear this over and over again. I was confused. On one hand, I still had feelings for him, but I knew this could be a complicated and messy situation. I asked him if he thought his fiancée was the one, and he said, I think so, but implied problems. And then suggested we meet up. Oh, this is like the perfect, like, you know, push away, pull in, push away, pull in. The flirting started again, and I got caught up in it, but the next day he pulled back, becoming distant and short with me. I never got the chance to tell him I didn't want to build something with him if it was secretive or hurtful to someone else. He just cut me off again. All right, I gotta call you out again, Nelly. I don't like what he did at all, so don't worry, I'm not excusing him. But you're the one who asked me. So you never got the chance to tell him you didn't want to build something with him. I don't believe you. You were trying to build something with him. You were doing one last ditch effort by reaching out to him. I don't blame you for wanting to know what happened, but I think, yeah, I just don't recommend it. I recommend when somebody treats you like that, just cut it off. You don't actually need to know. You know he had a girlfriend. That is enough information. And it sounds like they're doomed, but please don't let that give you hope. I never got the chance to tell him I didn't want to build something with him if it was secretive. But the thing is, you did. Having contact with a guy who's engaged, it's and making plans to meet up, and you got caught up in it. You did. And it's so much better if you can be honest with yourself. All healing depends on us being honest with ourselves and just going, wow, I'm still like trying to pull this together. And I hear that you got to that point in some ways here. I decided to reach out to his fiancée and tell her the truth. Okay, I totally don't think that's ever the right thing to do. It's none of your business. They're in another country. And in this case, I guess you gave her information that she wanted, but yeah, I think a lot of people will howl in the comments and go, no, you got to tell each other. But I really, really disagree. You participated in this guy's downfall. Now you're trying to kind of like play the good gal side of things. And you always knew he had a girlfriend. So you both figured out that he had done all these like sneaky, deceptive, fake identity messaging stuff. And then he told her that it was just to trick you and give you payback for not paying attention to him, which I believe was a lie. I think that was a lie. He didn't do that. He's just always sort of looking for a fix, I think. But it's something that sounded like to his girlfriend that maybe he thought was less bad. Oh, well, she hurt me before. It was just payback. He didn't want to lose his girlfriend or his fiancée. So you were both hurt and confused. And you go, I feel like I was being punished. Nope. You were just the casualty of somebody's basically like addictive sexual behavior because of it's just thoughtless, selfish, bad behavior. What he's doing there, lying to everybody. Here's the part that I'm struggling with, and I already knew what you would say, because this is so normal for people with attachment wounds. Despite everything he's done, lying, betraying, and treating me horribly, I can't seem to let go of him. A part of me still wants to believe he was the love I missed out on, even though I logically know that's problematic. I'm second-guessing my decisions and my judgment. All right, so let me help you. No, your judgment is right. Get out. Stop contact. Don't contact this guy again. He's trouble. He's upset your life quite badly. He's hurt this other woman. Just stay away. And he lies. And don't do it. I'm second guessing my decisions because I think, no, maybe this is love. Only trauma girl, and I'm one too. Only we could conclude with such treatment that what it really means is it's the one. We'll let people in the comments speak up on that. It doesn't work out that way, does it, my friends? Okay. So you wanted clarity, wisdom, and guidance, and that's it. That's my perspective. There's an attachment wound, and when he pulled away, of course, you fall madly in love again. That's when you fall in love. I'm really sorry that this happened. If it's not too late in your marriage, maybe just see if you can stop the damage and get some help with that attachment wound. You can go to therapy for that, There's a lot of things you can do. There's 12-step programs. You can come into our membership program, take my dating course or the the Healing Childhood PTSD course that I have. So you can start learning about how this drives you and learn techniques to start to calm that need to run away. I'm all about that. When you have a trauma wound from childhood, it can make it desperately important to have somebody close to you and then completely overwhelming to have someone close to you. And so we end up hurt and alone again and again and again. And this can stop. And it's not going to come through this guy. It's not going to probably come through anyone you know. But I'll leave that to you to decide if your marriage is salvageable or what you would want. But I really urge you to get help for this. This is a tough thing to live with. And everything you can do to heal it is totally worthwhile. So if anyone's watching this and you think that maybe trauma affected your ability to connect with people, to tolerate closeness and connection with other people, you are not alone. I have a quiz that will show you some of the signs that that's what's going on. You can download it for free right here. And I will see you very soon.